Success is choice. When I wake up in the morning, I get to choose how much I work, how much I don't work, where I live, all those kinds of things. Success is just choice for me. The more choice I have, the more freedom I feel, and that makes me feel happy. Know what it is for you. If you're chasing just this generic brand of success, you'll never achieve it. And it doesn't matter how much money you get, how much power you get, how much respect you have, there's no finish line. I work harder than everyone else. I do it to a better standard than everyone else. No one wants this as bad as me. That was the corner I had painted myself into. And then to be in a situation where it's like, I don't care how bad you want it, man, you can't move. Straight away, I was like, how are we going to pay the bills? Like, I'm not doing the 100 hours a week anymore. There was initial kind of freak out period where I was like, I have to think of something and I have to think of it right now because we don't really have any time to lose here. And then on the personal side of it, it was, have I done this so bad now that it's irreversible? Is this what I look like for the rest of my life kind of deal? And then there was the emotional side of it, which was just kind of basically feeling like going from being the man, I was doing everything, and then to being like completely useless. I can't even go to the bathroom myself. So then there was this huge emotional kind of processing part of like, dude, like you were doing everything and now you can literally do nothing. You have to rely on everyone else. Otherwise it doesn't get done.
Dale Meyer is a former tradesman turned self-taught business owner who in the last 6 years has built and made as passive as practical 5 of his own businesses. After suffering from a serious back injury early in his business career, he has shifted his focus to innovating strategies and systems for maintaining high performance both personally and professionally.
Welcome back to Peak Performance Hacks, and today's guest that we have is Dale Meyer. He started off his career in the trades area, but now he's built his business or businesses into 5 different businesses, and he has a pretty good life. But one of the biggest challenges he had while he was doing this was that he injured his back, and he learned a lot about that event, which has kind of shaped how he has developed his life, his lifestyle, as well as his business. Dale, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, Gan. It's a pleasure to be here, mate. Always happy to have a chat to you, and hopefully we can build something that your audience will enjoy today.
Exactly, Dale. And I think the first thing I sort of want to get into is maybe you can tell us a little bit about how did you get here? You're pretty young. You're quite successful in your own way, in physically, business, as well as personally as well. So why don't you let the audience know how you sort of got to this point and where you started and where you're at now?
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, I think probably the most important thing to say is when you're kind of trying to juice it all down to like a sentence. It sounds really cool. Like even hearing that, it's like, oh, wow, that's awesome. Like, good on you, man. But as we all know, anyone that's chasing success or anyone that's trying to perform at the highest level, it's not as easy as it sounds. The end story always sounds better than, or sexier or fancier than when you're actually building it. So the short version is, man, is about 6 years ago, I really had no idea what I wanted to do or where I was heading. I was working a job as a boilermaker, so structural fabrication, a lot of heavy duty welding and things like that. And the job that I was working, I just hated it. I'd been working at the same place for like 8 years, and every day was miserable. And I just thought to myself, almost every day, there's got to be something better than this. And it just got to a point for me where I was like, all right, well, let's try and figure out what that is rather than sitting around doing that. So I started my first business 6 years ago. And fast forward to today, we've got 5 and the project that you know about, the Sequoia project as well. And the whole journey has really just kind of been as much personal as it has been professional as well. Like you can't change your entire life without changing yourself. You have to change for everything around you to change as well. So it's been a long journey. Like you said in the intro there as well, I hurt my back along the way. A lot of physical labor building my businesses. We're mostly in the service industry. So herniated my L4, L5 and L5 S1 and then sequestered that S1 disc as well and ended up not being able to use my legs for the better part of 3 months. There's a lot of definitely a lot of learning that gets crammed into that short period of time.
I think
break into that.
In terms of, there's just so much there. So let's start from the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people who, obviously I actually have a lot of patients who have kids who are getting into the trades and also have patients in the trades. And so how did it kind of start where you got into the being a Boilermaker? Did you start as an apprentice? How did that sort of happen?
Yeah, so I actually did a school-based apprenticeship. So I started when I was in year 10. and then finished the last 2 years of school at trade school. And then obviously 2 years after school was already a qualified boilermaker. So that I got into at school-based apprenticeship. And at the time, I just had no idea what I wanted to do. And all of my family before me, my old man's a mechanic, my granddad was a welder and fabricator, and I was just like, oh, well, cool, like that's what I'll do, So that's really how I got into it. And then what I ended up getting into had nothing to do with the trade whatsoever. And as I kind of learned more, more skills in business, I could then kind of mesh the two together. And that's when our third business kind of led more back into the trade kind of orientated area or industry. But just did it straight out of school, and then did it, like I said, did it for 8 years. So it was a big chunk of my life.
Enjoy that time, or was it just a grind and you were like, I'm a little bit lost? Because there's a lot of people, especially younger people that I talk to, and a lot of them feel lost and they're not sure what they're going to do. And I believe you probably work with quite a few of them. Did you go through that period where you felt a little bit lost and also, or just were going with the motion? How was it?
Consistently, man. Like even when I was choosing the trade, I didn't know. I wasn't like, oh, this is the thing. Like this is exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. I was like, do I want to be a mechanic? Do I want to be fridge tech? Do I want to be a welder? I don't know. And I just went out and tried something, and then I was like, okay, cool. I kind of I get this. I understand how it works. And to be honest with you, the learning was the fun part. I don't think it would have mattered what trade I went into, but for me, the learning was exciting. I was like, shit, I can build stuff now. Like I know what to do, to get different results and to build foundations and to make things. So that part was exciting, but the job itself and the industry, not the industry, sorry, the business that I was working for, that part really took the shine off the trade. The environment was pretty poor. The people I worked with weren't that great. There was a lot of turnover, so you didn't get like a good team around you. And that part was really poor. It took the shine off it for sure. But lost for most of my early life and early 20s, I was just like, I have no idea what I want to do outside of this. I just go to work and that's what I do.
So you go in the morning and come back in the evening and then you just rest because you're so exhausted.
Yeah, pretty much. And then go over, and then usually the times that you think about what am I going to do next is on your lunch break or when you're in the shower when you get home, and then you're asleep. So there's not a whole lot of time to kind of build a new life out of that. But for me, and probably one thing that for me, being a business owner now, is if I had found something that I really loved, Gan, I would have stuck with it. And I say to people all the time, they're like, oh, you probably don't think employment's, for people that want to be successful. Man, you can succeed in anything. There's so many different ways to succeed. It's different, whichever way you choose, sure. But if I had found that perfect job with that perfect team and all that, I would have stayed there forever. At the end of the day, we all want to be happy. And if I had found happiness in employment, I would have stayed there. The fact of the matter is I just didn't find it in a time frame that I was happy with. So I had to try something else.
So you injured your back. And in that 8 years, was it the last year that you were working as a Boilermaker when that happened, or was it on the next adventure that you took off?
Yeah, that was on the next adventure, funnily enough, because when I went out and started working for myself, because I'd been in services my entire life with trades, I thought, well, that's where I'll start. I know how to talk to the customer. I know how to build things from the ground up, build a service, innovate. So it was when I started working for myself that I was like, oh, shit, there's a lot of work that goes into this. And especially when you're trying to build a business, there's a transition period between when you're doing everything and when you start to build a team. And it was right at that point where I was doing everything. I had more work than I can handle. I was working 100-hour weeks, and you're doing 100-hour weeks for 6 months straight with no days off and no holidays, doing labor-intensive stuff. Eventually something's got to give. And for me, it was my spine.
Yeah. But then, so what was the breaking point? I mean, no pun intended there, but what was the breaking point between the Boilermaker to the next? What gave you sort of the confidence and the courage to say, like, you know what, I'm sick of this. It's a toxic environment. I'm not happy being here.
So basically for me, man, it wasn't so much, having a bunch of confidence where I was like, oh, yeah, I know I'm just going to go and do this new thing and succeed. I didn't really have any experience in business whatsoever. So it wasn't really like, oh, cool, I'll just change one thing for another. It was more so that I was just so unhappy in what I was doing, and probably a better word is unfulfilled. I just didn't feel like I was moving forward or backwards or anything. I was just kind of hovering where I was at. And it just got to a point for me where I was like, hey, I would rather basically live in a skip under the overpass than keep doing what I'm doing. So I'm just going to give it a shot and see where I end up.
And so you made, you resigned, and essentially, what was the first idea that came up or that you started?
Yeah, so basically what happened is I actually started saying to people, they'd say, how's work? And I'd say, I'm going to go out and do my own thing. And then that naturally actually generated, because people knew my skill set. I've been doing it for 8 years. So they were kind of like, oh, dude, like if you want to do some stuff for me, like I've got some stuff you can do and whatever like that. And so I quit my job just to do the cash jobs that I'd been handed, just general fabrication. I was even building decks and things like that for a little while there. And while I was kind of setting up, and it wasn't until I thought that's where I was going to go. But it wasn't a business. It was just, I had like 6 or 7 friends that were like, hey, come and do this at my house. And I was like, great, I'll just do that. And then from there, I actually got my first business idea. I was building a deck for my girlfriend's family. And they lived in an area where one side of the property was on the water, and then they only had a single driveway and then one little patch of grass. And when I was building the deck, I had to obviously get the waste taken away. And I was like, well, this is so annoying because I've got the skip on the grass and I can either put it on the grass and kill the grass, or I can put it on the driveway and then they can't move their cars and I don't have anywhere else to put it. And I was like, what I need someone to drive here, get all the stuff from site and then piss off immediately. That's what I need. And I was like, when I finished the deck, that's about as much cash as I had in my bank. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be that guy. I'm just going to literally go to people's houses that are doing this kind of stuff. They don't have nowhere to put the skip. I'm going to go and do the waste removal, go in, take it up for them then and there, and they won't have the same problem. So that was where the idea came from. And I thought, well, let's just give it a go and see what happens. So we started in waste removal, which is not so glamorous, but hey, I don't really care as long as it gets results.
So essentially you saw a problem that you needed to solve for yourself. And then you realized if you had it, other people had the same problem.
For sure, yeah. And like on the street they live, there was 30, 40 houses. And I was like, well, surely they've all got the same problem. Like there's water on one side and there's nothing on the other. So I was basically like, if as long as this scenario exists somewhere else, there is a chance here that other people are having this problem or have had this problem in the past and would think it's a good idea. And so that's where we started, man. We started taking people's junk, and I got a lot of shit from my friends and people that knew me, and they were like, man, like you're going from being an engineer to a garbage man, and they laughed at me and all that kind of stuff. And for me, as long as it was something different and I was learning something different, then it was good enough for me.
Well, there's a couple of things there. Firstly, I hope that's not how you found your girlfriend.
No, not exactly.
That's all right. And I guess the second thing is, did you just end up sort of doing like post drop saying that you want your stuff removed?
Yeah, 100%, man. So when we started, and because I thought this was such a revolutionary idea, because I'd been in the trade and I hadn't seen it before, and I was like, oh, this is such a revolutionary idea, it'll be a game changer. I just basically Googled how to start a business and how to let customers know. And it was like, flyer drops, hand out cards at local cafes, like go to networking events. I even got a little spot on local radio and like all this kind of stuff. And like, I thought this will just be like wildfire. For the first 14 days, man, no one called. Like, I didn't get a phone call. Like, whatsoever. I spent all my money, bought the truck, got insurance, all that kind of stuff. And then for the first 14 days, I was like, oh shit, I might have made a huge mistake here. So that's how it started. It wasn't the most promising of starts, but it ended up picking up from there.
So the first 6 months you worked yourself really hard until your back was bad. And so for 3 months, so are we talking about the first 6 months that you injured yourself and then you had 3 months off that you couldn't work?
No, so this actually came later. I ran the waste business by myself for about 6 months, and then we built up and got some operators and some new trucks and things like that. So in 6 months we had about four operators and 4 trucks. And then we started my second business, which was in property management, and that was when we were kind of supplying trades to people who had investment properties, but they didn't know how to manage tradesmen. And then naturally with my experience, I was like, hey, I'm here taking all your junk away from your renovation and stuff like that anyway. Why don't I manage this whole thing, and you don't have to like fly down from North Queensland or fly over from WA to manage this thing. You can save thousands of dollars, and you've got a person who knows what they're talking about on site. So that kind of picked up. And then from there, when I injured my back was when I was kind of like, well, why are we supplying all these other trades? Why don't we supply our own trades? And then I was like, well, let's get in and figure out how this whole construction business would work. And I started doing all of that myself because it was going to be such a large operation that I needed to know the ins and outs of every detail before I started picking up, acquiring talent and things like that. So I worked on that business in construction, doing everything from fabrication, plastering, tiling, roofing, you name it. I was doing it. And that's what I was doing for that 6-month period where I was just working 100 hours a week. And what I was doing was building up a brand in that industry where people could trust us and we do what we said we were going to do. And then I could bring people who fit that brand into the business. It just so happened that after 6 months of doing that, my body just said, we're already well past our use by date on this, mate. And it decided it wasn't going to take any more. So it was actually probably about a year, maybe a year and a half. Yeah, somewhere around there, between a year and a half when I actually injured my back. And was hospitalized.
So what was your learning? Because obviously 3 months, could you walk?
So basically for 2 months, I had no feeling in my legs whatsoever because when the word they used was I sequestered a herniated disc and fragments came off it, and that impacted my root nerve, which then obviously my legs wouldn't work. But I also, from the swelling and the compression that I had in those 2 lower discs, I also got quarter equina syndrome, which meant I lost all use of my bowels as well. So I had a bag in and a catheter in and all that kind of stuff. So for 2 months, no feeling in my legs whatsoever. And then during that 3rd month, kind of got back to a point where I could understand that my legs were there again, and I just kind of relearned how to walk and maneuver. But even in that process, towards the end of the 3 months, I was still on crutches for another month and a half after that as well. So it was a long process.
That would have been really scary.
Yeah, it was terrifying. To be honest with you, it was really terrifying. And honestly, if my girlfriend Sarah wasn't there to take care of me during that time, I don't know how I would have got through, to be honest, because my family lives in the States and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, she basically just was a full-time carer for 3 months there, which was huge.
And did you? What was the biggest learning? I mean, obviously, I can only imagine this would have been scary for anyone. And I mean, you're talking about it, but then it didn't sound like there was. I mean, it was a terrible time. But so, did you? What was the biggest take from there when you're sitting there in the uncertainty of, am I going to walk again? Is this, what have I done in my life? You would have had all these questions. What was going on?
Yeah, for sure. So probably just to make it easier to break it up, professionally, first of all, at that point, I had already said to my girlfriend, hey, I'll take care of finances stuff. The businesses are going well. We're all good. So straight away, I was like, how are we going to pay the bills? I'm not doing the 100 hours a week anymore. I'm not building I'm not getting the jobs and doing all that kind of stuff anymore. First of all, I was like, what's going to happen? Are we going to be able to pay our rent in 3 months or 6 months? Or if I can't walk again, what's going to happen? So there was initial, kind of freak out period where I was like, I have to think of something and I have to think of it right now because we don't really have any time to lose here. And then on the personal side of it, it was, again, like you said, have I actually have I done this so bad now that it's irreversible? Is this what I look like for the rest of my life kind of deal? So that was a huge kind of personal thing of my decisions have led me here. No one else did this. I did this. So there has to be a change of the guard. We can't do this. We can't continue to work like this. I don't care how good you think you are. You have put yourself in this position, and that's left you exposed to maybe never walking again. And then there was the emotional side of it, which was just kind of basically feeling, going from being the man, I was doing everything, and then to being completely useless, can't get up, can't get a glass of water, can't really help myself. I can't even go to the bathroom myself. So then there was this huge emotional kind of processing part of dude, you were doing everything and now you can literally do nothing. You have to rely on everyone else. Otherwise it doesn't get done. So those were probably the 3 biggest parts for me, Gan, was just trying to get through those simultaneously. One in any, or either of them on their own would have been plenty, but doing them simultaneously was pretty tough.
Yeah, I can imagine. And just listening to what you're saying, it would have been so hard. But somewhere in there, I feel like there was a switch in you because you obviously decided that, I'm not going to be here. I'm going to make something of my life. I'm going to work hard to start walking again. What was that switch for you?
Yeah, so it probably came more so my whole thing up until that point, to get to where I wanted to be, even in that first year and a half, was stand in my way, I'll run you over. Like it was a push mentality. It was just don't, whatever. It doesn't matter what's coming up. I want this so bad. Just consider it already done. That was the whole thing. It was a real push mentality. And when you have an injury like that or a health incident like that, you can't. Sometimes you can't push. Push doesn't work. So it was actually about being able to learn, that thing had got me results to them, but it also had got me where I'm at. So now it's not so much about push. Maybe it's about pull. Maybe it's about going inwards rather than pushing outwards, and kind of re-engineering myself rather than trying to re-engineer my life and everything exterior of me. Rebuild myself is now the priority, because if I can't take care of myself, I can't take care of anyone else. So that was kind of the huge moment for me where I was like, I need to change. And if I don't, I'm just going to go back to doing exactly what I was doing, because that's all I've known. That's all that's got results in the past. So that was the huge shift for me, was now, you've worked on the exterior. It's got you to this point. But now if we don't flip this around and you don't rebuild yourself and work on how you operate and how these things are actually going to go in the future and be consistent, then we don't really have a future, because you'll just end up back in hospital, or you just end up, and after that kind of injury, you can't just go back onto the tools, work on 100-hour weeks. Your body just won't allow it. So there had to be something different. And that's where I decided to look, was internal rather than external.
Was there any element where you thought that, now I'm successful, I've been doing it, and even though I sort of ground myself down really badly, how am I going to get back again? Was there any element of doubt there?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a point there where, everything in my life is active. I ride motocross. I played AFL football. Everything I did was active. So then I lost this huge part of me for even after the recovery, and when I was walking again, I didn't get to do any of that. So there was this whole part where I had to kind of say to myself, that part of you could be gone forever. So what? And that creates doubt. That creates doubt. All the things that make you, a lot of them have been taken away. So that does create the doubt of, and the mental kind of capacity. Yeah, okay, we've experienced a lot of stuff and we've gone through a lot of stuff, but we haven't gone through this before. So is all of that relevant? Is all that evidence that, okay, you've overcome, these obstacles, is that relevant in this scenario? And a huge part of that was actually applying so much of what I'd learned in business and asking myself questions about how the results came. And how can I use any experience, going even back to when I was a kid, when I was 15 years old, when I was 18-year-old, going just through my entire life, full introspection of, if I've ever got results, how can I apply that learning to getting a result here, and then improving myself, and then improving the business as well? Because, like I said, I can't just go back to doing what I was doing. It doesn't work. So then I had to learn how to trust more, and I had to learn how to build teams more, and I had to learn, how to innovate systems that would work with this newfound situation. So now when I look back at it, and I think it was such a blessing. It was such an incredible experience. In the moment, I was like, why me?
Yeah, exactly. Why me? And is it ever going to change? So what was the first thing you did when you got out, you started walking, you're recovering, but you're back to yourself, but not completely? What was the first thing that you did to change everything?
Yeah, well, it actually started before I was even out of hospital. To be completely honest, I was still taking phone calls and everything like that in hospital, trying to organise. We had work. I had work lined up, for months in advance, and we had tight deadlines, and customers were expecting things. And I had built this brand, as I said earlier, of we do what we do. We do what we say we're going to do every single time. Now, that was what generated so much of the results in all of our business experience previous. So I wasn't prepared. Now, if all that work just disappears, and I'm that guy that, he sent us a quote, but now we can't do it, and all that kind of stuff, kind of goes against everything I built. So even when I was in hospital, I was making phone calls to people I'd been to trade school with, people that I trusted in the supply industry, basically anyone that I trusted and I knew would understand my situation and would do an awesome job for me. And I just basically built them a deal. And I remember sitting there with a notepad in bed, and I was on a lot of painkillers, but I was fading in and out trying to write this plan of like, how can I get people I know do great work and who we have mutual respect between, how can I get them to help me out in this period of time so I can buy myself a window where I can then build something where this is sustainable, where, you know, everyone else can take over. So the first thing for me was business, because, you know, I'd made promises to my girlfriend where I was like, hey man, like, you don't have to work, like just chill out, I'll take care of all this. So, and in that instance, it's not like I can just say, hey, can you please get a job because, you know, I broke myself in half. Like if she wasn't home, man, like I said, I don't have anyone looking after me. So I was in that situation, was like, I got to make this work so we can pay the bills and we can afford to live and do all those kinds of things. And that was really the first port of call was, I'm not going to be walking tomorrow. I'm going to have to accept that. That's out of my control right now. What is within my control? I can plan for the future. I can make something happen. And that's really where my new thought process started, was with the business, how can we do that? And then that turned out to be one of the best decisions. And, you know, all my time went from 100-hour a week to 0. And I was like, well, if I just spend 100 hours a week in bed, like innovating and revising these systems, surely I'll have something good by the end of it. You can't put that much time into it and not have something decent. So that's what I did. And I basically restructured the entire business in the next week or so while I was in hospital. And then coming out of that, that's when the physical and the you know, emotional and personal rehab really started. That was the first thing I honestly thought to do, because I knew, like, all the doctors basically said, mate, you're pretty fucked now. So you know, this isn't going to happen overnight. And the numbers they were giving me as well, you know, they were kind of like, it's 50-50. Some people recover without surgery. Some people need surgery. You know, and I was like, well, yeah, I can't really do anything other than that. So that's where I started. And then, like I said, heaps of introspection back to what worked at football, what worked in sport, what worked in relationships with family, what worked in relationship with friends, literally anything I could take from what had worked in the past. How can I apply that learning to now to just generate the best result?
That's an amazing story, Dale. And so then obviously you created systems, I'm assuming, to run your business. And then from your construction business, you obviously moved on to other businesses as well within the same industry, or kind of linked
similar.
To
parallel
similar
industry,
yeah. And so that was probably the big impetus in your life, wasn't it? That injury for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And even coming up to that too, Gan, was, you know, there was a huge thing of trust. Like, you know, I work harder than everyone else. I do it to a better standard than everyone else. No one wants this as bad as me. That was the corner I had painted myself into. And then to be in a situation where it's like, I don't care how bad you want it, man, you can't move. So someone has to do it. And then that kind of bred this new culture within the business where I can trust people. I'm going to hold them to a very high standard because that's how I hold myself. But if they meet that, then the spoils are there for everyone. And that's kind of, we shaped an entirely different business structure based on, I have to trust people. And that was, like you said, that was a huge learning for me. Was I went from being, I'm the best thing that's ever happened to this business, to, hey, we're all the best thing that ever happened to this business. And that changed everything.
Yeah. And so in terms of your health, you've obviously had almost a 180, going from working so hard to finally sort of managing a business with other people and staff. Have you had any other challenges post that event? Because obviously it's a journey, and then you've gone through completely shifting the way you think about it. But do you have struggles now with your health in terms of your mind saying you want to go for it and you want to go hard? Do you find yourself going through those any new challenges now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, on any journey, whether it's business or it's not, you always, every time that you try and push the envelope, you'll come up against new challenges. It's just the nature of the beast. So now it's more of a matter of being able to spot the trends, look at the cycles, and understand that something might be really exciting. There might be, the best opportunity that you could think of, or you've built this, you've got this huge deal coming up or whatever it is. But now there's an added lens, an added perspective of you have to manage yourself. And consistency over time is more important than these huge peaks and these huge troughs. And I always use the analogy, if two cars set off on the highway to go on a road trip, the car that sits at 80 kilometers an hour and doesn't have to stop for fuel will always beat the car that drives at 150 and has to stop 5 times. just because of that consistency over time, its speed over time. So the challenge now really is not only for myself, but for the team and for everyone that's coming through the Sequoia project and stuff like that is, yes, we get excited and yes, we understand that there's opportunities and we're learning all the time, but being able to manage ourselves within that, even the biggest engines in the world have to shut down for maintenance. So if you want to be great at something, you have to be the greatest over time. Anyone can have a shit hot month. Anyone can be the best player for a week, but the best of all time are the ones that have done it for the longest periods.
Yeah. And you've, just for the audience out there, can you tell us a little bit about the Sequoia project as well?
Yeah, cool. So the Sequoia project in a nutshell is basically something that I started. It's a passion project of mine where once everything had been made passive, me and my girlfriend started traveling about 2 years ago. And as I was traveling, I just kind of thought, I've got a bit of time now and I want to use it effectively, as effectively as possible. So, and have an impact rather than so much, build something completely logical for the business. I just wanted to build something that was for me. Something fun, something that I enjoyed. So basically we just try and give as many people in startups or, even existing businesses the information from the experience that we've had so they don't make as many mistakes as I did, basically, and less people end up in hospital, trying to change their financial situation. So that's where it started. And the back injury was huge in that too, Gun. Like, I don't want, when I simplify it down, I was going from a place where I wasn't happy financially, I wasn't happy in my work. All I wanted to achieve was financial stability and being happy in my work. Now, when you just look at those two metrics, you shouldn't have to break your spine in the middle to get there. And from all the mistakes that I made, that's what ended up happening. So if I can save even one person from doing that, that's great. We've talked to, in the last 8 months, we've talked to over 500 business owners now. So that's really cool. Really happy with that.
Yeah, so I think that's an amazing thing you do. And obviously, I was going to ask you the why. So I'm assuming it was the back, it was the injury, and then the fact that you're successful now, that you want to sort of help other people as well, especially younger people who are trying to come up and are confused, like we spoke about earlier. What do you think is sort of one of the commonest things when it comes to health, especially for young business owners and startups that are coming up, that you find that you come across quite often?
Yeah, in all honesty, the numbers dictate. It's the stress that comes with confusion, honestly. Yeah. Like it's not knowing what you're doing or where it's going to lead you. Some of the people that we talk to, they have all the skills in the world. They're super smart people, smarter people than I am, most of them. But it's always that confusion of going, I don't have clarity. If I knew where this was going to get me, I would probably feel a lot better about this. And it's probably one of the things that I would say, for your listeners, if they are struggling in this area, is the difference between perceived pressure and actual pressure. That's what we see the most. People put so much pressure on themselves when there really isn't any stakes at all. And they grind themselves down to a point just from, questioning themselves, doubting themselves, feeling like they don't know any better, outsourcing all of their intellect and their decision-making. And then by the time they actually hit something that could work or that, they could actually start to build that confidence in, they're dead, they're tired, they've run out. There's no more juice in the batteries. So yeah, for me, the biggest thing is just understanding when you're putting pressure on yourself for the sake of feeling pressure versus when there's actually pressure. Like when someone says, hey, I've got a contract for you, but I need it done in 2 weeks. Now, if you're exhausted before you get there, you work so hard to get that opportunity, but you don't have there's nothing left in the tank. So you cannot actively, make the most of that opportunity or take the opportunity. So yeah, that's what we see a lot, man, is people they're so confused that it drains them. It's physically and mentally draining them.
I think one of the biggest issues linked to what you just said was the fact that, especially when you're young, you almost feel like it needs to happen tomorrow. But the idea behind most things is that you have to have a bit of patience, like you mentioned earlier, like the car that, goes at a slower rate but just goes on for a longer time versus the fastest car that has to stop multiple times. And I think for a lot of people, that having the patience and the uncertainty is actually a big issue, because if you knew it was going to work and you had the confidence to know that this is going to happen, everyone will do it. But I think the challenge is they don't believe that they would get there because they also don't have the patience to think that they're actually going to make it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's such an important point to take, is there's so much I don't even know what to call it. I'll just call it crap. There's so much crap out there. You see people on social media, we're just taking in all this information. None of it's verified. None of it is actually, it's not real until, you can see the figures and the numbers yourself. But we see that, and it looks like this person had this astronomical rise, and overnight this person's a millionaire. Overnight this person's got a successful business and all that kind of stuff. But what you don't see is the 8 months or the 2 years or the 5 years of work that goes before that, because that's not sexy to put on social media. So you just see this one day they're here and the next day they're there, and then you think that's how it works, and you start comparing yourself to everyone else. And that piles on that pressure, because you go, Gan, he was having beers with me at the pub, and the next day he's a doctor. No, mate, it takes 10 years. It takes so long to do that. But when you're not the person going on the journey, you just see point A and point B, and you start to compare yourself against that. Well, why aren't I successful? Why don't I have the house? Why don't I have the cars? And that's, again, perceived pressure. It's not real. None of it's real. We just do that to ourselves, and it causes more disharmony. So. It's such a huge point to be able to go, this is going to take time. And what I always say is the person with the most experience will make the best decisions. That's just how it goes. But to define what experience is, it's just a list of a person who has a long list of what they know work and a long list of what they know doesn't work. And to do that, you have to try something. You have to try. You have to go out and have an idea and go, I think this will work. Hey, whether it works or not is not your problem. It's about gaining that experience. As the opportunities get presented to you, you make more good decisions, you make more money, you do that. But that happens over time. You can't make 100,000 decisions today because you just don't have enough time. It happens over months. It happens over years,
Yeah. And so we have sort of a segment in this show where we talk about walking the talk. Mm-hmm. So you're obviously helping a lot of people. You're working in your business. Plus, you're also helping a lot of people in terms of trying to get them to get to a position where you're at. But when you have tough days, do you walk the talk, and what do you do to kind of stay straight for yourself as well?
Yeah, for sure, man. And it's a good question, because when everything's going good, everyone's a superstar. But I think what I've learned, man, is I've had enough bad days, and probably those bad days serve more so as the experience for helping others and for talking to other people in business. When I'm having bad days, I have fail safes. I have things that catch me, so that I'm not moving in a negative direction towards as it pertains to my goals. So I have at 8 p.m. every night I have an introspection. It's in my calendar, and it comes up and it just says introspection. That's all it says, and I know that's time to ask myself set questions about the day and about what I did and about how I felt about it. So let's say I miss my resistance training, or I this or that. I will catch myself and I'll be like, dude, I don't feel good about that, because I know my goal is to be fit or be healthy. I know my goal is to I want to work on climbing Everest. So that's another thing. Every second day I do cardio training and flexibility, and every one in between I do resistance training. So I know that if I miss that and I catch myself in introspection, I go, I was busy, and I was on the phone to 30 people today, and I had to whatever. There was excuses. I know that I'm not happy with that, and I catch that. So that's how I kind of set myself up. So if I catch that and I know that I've missed it, then the day's not over. So if there's a spare 15 minutes or if there's a spare half an hour, then guess what we're doing? We're doing resistance training. And it's just a matter for me is catching myself in those areas and asking those questions that might go unasked if you're not aware of them. Is what did I do today? Am I happy with it? Am I closer towards my goals or am I not? And all those kinds of things that if you answer them honestly, the answer will either be yes or no. And if the answer is no, hey, you got more work to do. If the answer is yes, then cool, man, put your feet up. It's a good day.
And I think it's interesting. While I was listening to that, a lot of peak performers, I think one of the big things is when things are not going well or they've missed out, just like you said, you missed something that it wasn't a good day. How do you sort of prevent yourself from being really hard on yourself? Because you can have that self-talk say, you know what, you can do better than this. You should be doing better than this. You're not going to go to sleep until you work out and you do that last thing. But again, it can go back to that mentality of really grinding yourself. So how do you sort of be kind to yourself while being firm?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the balancing point for me is something that I touched on earlier, which is if you want to be great at something, you also have to be the best at rest. So by monitoring yourself and going, all right, cool. I missed, let's say resistance training, for example. I missed that session today. Yes, I have half an hour. Normally would it be longer? Would it be shorter if I only have 15 minutes? The fact of the matter is I can do as much in 15 minutes as possible. And it doesn't have to be a 2-hour workout or something huge, but I will still get it done. I'll still get a benefit from doing it. Then on the flip side of that, when it's time to rest and I go, cool, now everything's done. It's not a matter of, okay, everything's done. Let's watch Netflix or let's do this or let's do that. I know what I've just done is crammed a huge day and then had to put a little extra on the table. I did 100% day because if it wasn't 100%, I would have fitted it in the allotted time. So the extra that I've gone over, I'm at 110%. So now if I want to be great at this and I want to continue this for the next month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever it is, now I have to rest effectively. So do I get in an ice bath? Do I, go for a walk, a wind down to cool my body down? Do I have a meditation session, or do I actively rest better to now mediate myself? And that's kind of where I catch myself, especially from the back injury. Is there are going to be times where you have to push, and there's going to be times where you don't. And it's about the law of averages, keeping that average, in a place in a window that you can get the best out of yourself constantly. So if you're going to be working hard, you need to know how to rest well. And a lot of people think rest is just not doing work. There are better ways to rest. There are more effective ways to rest. So that's where that's where I balance myself anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. I think people need to hear that, because I think it's quite easy to be tough on yourself. And, David Goggins, who, is always about pushing hard, just keep going hard. And I think it's great that he has that in him. But I think for a lot of people, sometimes that can be a challenge. And sometimes you got that bit on the side of you or the side of your shoulder saying, you're weak, you got to go harder, you got to keep going harder. And I feel like sometimes I got that David Goggins telling me, you got to go harder, push harder.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. And everyone, I think everyone has a version of that too, Gun, and even above that, everyone's different, I don't know so much about Goggins, but from what I have heard, he hasn't been doing this for a week. He's been doing this for years. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So at this point, his natural progression is at a point now where he can push at that level. That's his homeostasis. That's normal for him. But for someone just starting out, and you've never run before, or you've never lifted weights before, or you've never done pull-ups before, you can't live by the same code. You're at two different places. You know what I'm saying? So it's a different experience everywhere you go, and everyone's different. Some people would respond really well to the endorphins and the growth that comes with running. Some people wouldn't. Some people have knee pain. Some people have back pain. Everyone's different. So it's about finding that variation. What he's saying has value. Yeah, push past the barriers and all that kind of stuff. But you have to define these things for yourself. Just doing something because someone else does it and they're successful at it doesn't mean you will be. It just means, and you will start, if you aren't, and you expect, I just did what David Goggins told me for a month, I should be better. Well, if you've just had 2 knee reconstructions, you're not going to be better. You're going to be worse. So it's about defining those things for yourself. And if there was one thing that I was going to take away that works for everyone in any level of business that I've ever spoken to, is define these terms and these things for yourself. The same word has different meanings to 100 different people. Like if I said to you, let's work really hard today. What's your definition of hard work? Mine's work until my back snaps in half. It's two different things. And you might be like, I did 8 hours today. That's really hard work. I did 20, and that's hard work. So define them for yourself and understand what they actually mean. Because when you understand what they mean, then you will get the actual results that you expect out of them. So if David Goggins says, if you don't run a marathon a day, you're a bitch, then, and if you don't define yourself or that word as the same thing, then, hey, it's a different outcome. You're going to get a different outcome. So I say to everyone, define them for yourself, define success for yourself, define high performance for yourself, define what results are, define all that stuff for yourself, and then you can play by your own rules. And the people who get the furthest are the ones that play games they can't lose.
Exactly. Well, the last part here, Dale, of the show is that we sort of leave the audience with sort of 5 tips that you think would be beneficial for them. So it can be any 5. And you can decide what 5 sort of things you want to leave them with, especially those that are aiming for high performance or in that arena of high performance. What do you think from a health perspective would be 5 tips that you could give?
Yeah, probably number 1 for me would be don't don't worry so much about, actually, no, I'm going to rephrase that. Don't take things so personally. That would be my first thing. For if you're trying to achieve high performance, is don't take things so personally, because every level that you get to, even if you are a 9 out of 10, there is still going to be lessons that you learn. There's still going to be information that you don't know. And even when you're a 10 out of 10, the one thing I know is if you think you know everything, then you know nothing. So there's always going to be that next level where you go, oh, I wish I knew that, a year ago. I wish I knew that last week. I wish I knew that before I did this. Just don't take it so personally, because the learning is what we're actually there for. We're there for the experience, not for so much for the result. So especially if you want to do things over time, is just don't take it so personally. You always, as long as you're improving, as long as you're gaining experience, you're on the right track. To go hand in hand with that, obviously manage yourself. It's so much better to go at 80% for 10 years than to go at 150% for a week. You'll just get so much more out of it. And in the end, you'll be able to maintain that. You'll have so much experience working between the ranges of, 60 and 100%, or even 80 and 120%. You'll have so much experience that you'll be able to do it better than anyone else. So I would say just find that range for you. Find how you can do these things over time and not get yourself to a point of burnout or injury or something like that. And then stay in there and become an expert in that range. Thirdly, I would say don't discount anything that gets results. If in any area of your life that you're looking at, I've even taken lessons from. I was at a petrol station one time, and I was listening to this kid ask his old man while he was pumping gas, "Hey, Dad, why is the sky blue?" And the guy said, "Oh, actually, I don't really know, but I think it's from the refraction of the water. Where do clouds come from? Oh, well, actually, it's this and this and this. Where does rain come from? Well, it comes from the clouds." And he just answered question after question after question after question. And I thought to myself, if I asked anyone in my life that many questions, they would tell me to piss off. But because this kid was genuinely curious and he just wanted to learn, the dad had all the patience in the world. And I looked at that and I thought to myself, that's how I want to be with my customers. I want to be genuinely curious about what is wrong. Why are the things in their life happening the way they are, and why aren't they happy with it? I want to be genuinely curious. And I actually adapted that into how I talk to people, and it yielded fantastic results. So if it's getting results anywhere in your life, or if you can see the logic behind why it would get results, don't discredit it wherever it comes from. Just take it. Getting a result means you can measure yourself with you getting better or forward. And in terms of high performance, you need to be measuring your result. You need to know where you are. And then probably, I don't know how many I'm in now, but let's just say
you're number 4 now. You're number 4.
No, number 4. Okay, cool. So number 4 is probably, I would define that especially define things for yourself. The last point that I spoke on is that would be a huge part of high performing. Is if you're taking everyone else's definition for granted, you'll never know if you're succeeding or not. Like if you want to talk a bit just about the word success, that can literally mean anything. Yeah, we're all using the same word, we're all talking the same language, but that can mean anything. Like for me, success is choice. Success is I get to choose when I wake up in the morning. I get to choose how much I work, how much I don't work, where I live, all those kinds of things. Success is just choice for me. The more choice I have, the more freedom I feel, and that makes me feel happy. For someone else, it might be I need an island I need an island of my own island where I build my own oasis and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't matter what it is, but know what it is for you. If you're chasing just this generic brand of success, you'll never achieve it. And it doesn't matter how much money you get, how much power you get, how much respect you have, you'll never there's no finish line. There's no even glimpse of a finish line. So you'll just be on this wheel. And so many people I hear, they go, "Oh, I had to get out of the rat race." And I say, "Well, what do you do now?" And they say, "Oh, I work 10 hours a day, every single day, and I have done for the last 5 years." And I say, "It sounds like you just built the hamster wheel instead of being in the rat race." And they go, "Oh shit, yeah, I've never looked at it like that." But that's the deal, because they're chasing success that they don't know. And some of those guys, they achieve success when they actually define it. They achieved it 2 years ago. And they just never realized it. So that define everything, and then finally, just do it your own way. Do it your own way. It doesn't matter. No one really knows what they're doing. Like the guys that built the internet. They didn't know where it was going to end up. They just knew that we have the technology, and we know we can build it. We have the capacity to build it. No one can really predict what's going to happen in the next 20, 30, 50 years, with complete certainty. So Abraham Lincoln said the best way to predict the future is to create it. And I believe that 100%. Go in, do it your own way. If you have a thought, it makes logical sense to you, and you think that it needs to happen. It's the best thing for you. It's the best thing for your business. It's the best thing for your family, whatever it is. Commit to that and do it differently to everyone else. We live in a world where the statistics say, 90% of people are living paycheck to paycheck or worse, and the other 10 have got more money than they know what to do with. So that tells me do it differently. Whatever you're doing, do it differently because you'll get a different result. So that would be number 5 for me.
Amazing, Dale. I think that for a lot of people hearing that, I think that they need to hear it, and I think that will be really helpful for them. But more importantly, I think thank you for all the work that you're doing. Obviously, with the Sequoia project, we'll leave some links in the description as well. And thanks for taking the time to come out here and have a chat with me.
Nah, my pleasure, man. You're doing good work yourself, man. Helping people get the best out of themselves, and the more people that are doing that and striving for that, the better the world gets, man. The more innovation, it's really good. So, pleasure to be here, and everyone out there, I hope it was it worked for you. I hope there's something in there you can take away.
This wraps up this episode of Peak Performance Hacks. All the links and resources are in the video description or in the resource section, whether it is on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you're watching this on YouTube, please consider subscribing. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a review so that more people can discover our podcast and it could benefit them as well. Until I catch you next time, speak soon.